before the United States became a nation, before Wall Street, before plantations, before Jim Crow, there was a corporation backed by kings, the Royal African Company. London, 1660, a nation recovering from civil war, a monarchy desperate to rebuild its power. King Charles II had regained the crown, but a king without money is a king without authority. He needed a new source of wealth, steady, guaranteed, limitless. His brother James, the Duke of York, had the answer, a new kind of corporation. Not a trading company, but a human extraction company designed to control the entire supply of enslaved Africans to the English colonies. In 1660, the king signed a royal charter. It granted the Duke of York's new company the exclusive right to seize, transport, and sell Africans across the Atlantic.
Just a little bit more about history and understanding how the disparity in wealth really started here.
The Duke of York, governor of the company, King Charles II, major investor, Lord Sandwich, naval commander, Sir John Barclay, colonial strategist, London bankers, foundation of modern finance. This was the boardroom, a who's who of England's elite.
RAC is what they would brand on the slaves when they would put them on the boats. Under King Charles II of England, interest in the riches of Africa, West Africa to be exact. They weren't just interested in the gold, however. They were mostly interested in the human labor.
Together, they formed one of the most powerful corporations in human history. The Royal African Company invented the industrial process of trafficking humans. The more people captured, the higher the profit margins. This was business refined, optimized, and weaponized. To mark their property, the company used branding marks. The initials, or AC, burned into human flesh. The Royal African Company became the main supplier of enslaved labor to the American colonies. Tobacco in Virginia, rice in Carolina, sugar in Barbados. These industries exploded because the RAC supplied the labor.
As they're coronated for more than 300 years. But as monarchs from King Charles II to Queen Elizabeth II wore this crown, they were wearing the legacy of slavery.
Over 212,000 Africans were forced onto RAC ships. More than 44,000 died on the journey.
The crown was made in 1661. The royal family started licensing armed British men to travel to West Africa to claim people as property, selling them into slavery.
The company grew rich, the monarchy grew rich, London grew rich. A king's signature created a corporation, and that corporation helped build the foundation of the American slave system. The Royal African Company did not just shape an empire, it shaped a nation. In the mid-1600s, a new symbol began appearing on human skin. Not a tribal mark, not the brand of a private trader, but the emblem of a corporation owned by a king.
British monarchy is so deeply entwined with the slave trade that their involvement can be traced right back to the very first recorded English slave ship.
In 1660, the English monarchy returned from exile. Charles II, a king hungry for power, wealth, and global influence, stepped back onto the throne. But Charles did not just want to restore the crown, he wanted an empire, and for that, he needed a new kind of business.
16th century, a man named John Hawkins sailed to Sierra Leone, violently captured 300 Africans, forced them onto his ship, and then sailed to Spanish plantations in the Americas to sell these human beings.
They were England's elite. Investors, generals, merchants, sugar barons, and together, they formed one of the most powerful corporations in world history. The Royal African Company granted absolute monopoly over the trade of gold, ivory, and human beings. James, Duke of York, the future King James II, became the governor of the Royal African Company. He signs documents authorizing ship construction. He did more than endorse the trade, he designed it. Under James, the slave trade became a business model, with quotas, with shipping standards, with projected profits. The Royal African Company branded the people it transported with its initials, RC, beneath the crown of England.
Queen Elizabeth I not only paid for more of his slave missions, but gave him ships and weapons. While selling Africans into slavery on Spanish plantations wasn't enough for the slave traders and their royal patrons. So in 1607, 104 English men and boys arrived in a land that they named after the Virgin Queen. They called it Virginia, and they named one of their first settlements Jamestown.
This was the only time in history when a corporation owned by the monarchy marked human beings as royal property. This was not the work of pirates or renegades. This was the policy of a king. From their headquarters on London's Lombard Street, the RAC ran the slave trade like a modern corporation. Ledgers, charts, profit projections, contracts with colonies. The company standardized shipping, standardized pricing, even standardized death. Between 1660 and 1700, more than 200,000 Africans were forced onto Royal African Company ships.
Then they set about violently displacing the indigenous people living on that land to create plantations that they would farm with enslaved Africans.
The RAC supplied the labor that built colonial America. Tobacco fields, rice plantations, sugar islands, ports from Virginia to Barbados. Farmers inspect newly arrived captives like livestock. Without the Royal African Company, the American colonies would never have grown with such speed or such cruelty. By the late 1600s, the Royal African Company had become one of the richest corporations in the world. Every coin earned from enslaved Africans strengthened Britain's rise and deepened America's foundation in slavery. The Royal African Company was more than a business. It was a system, a network of kings, bankers and merchants, all profiting from human lives. In the 1600s, the city of London was more than a city. It was a world within a world, the richest square mile on earth. And deep inside these streets, a network of families, financiers, and politicians controlled the British Empire's greatest source of wealth, the power network, the inner circle. The Royal African Company was governed by a circle of men whose influence reached far beyond trade. Key power families, the Cavendish family, aristocrats tied to British Parliament, the Percival family, early financiers, the Venner family, goldsmith bankers who funded the crown, the Clifford family, tied to Caribbean plantations, the Montagu family, navy powerbrokers. Many of these names are preserved in British landmarks, estates, and titles to this day. These men were not faceless bureaucrats. They were some of the most powerful figures in Britain, and they ran the RAC like a government unto itself. In the shadows of Britain's rise, the Royal African Company carved its name into history, not with ink, but with chains. For nearly a century, its crest sailed across the Atlantic, carrying with it human lives, stolen futures, and the foundations of an empire built on suffering today. The ledgers are closed, the investors are long gone, the forts have crumbled, but the echoes remain. The same waters that once dragged millions from their homes now carry their stories back to us. And with every tide, we are reminded that the wealth of nations did not appear from thin air. It was taken, extracted, and forced. The Royal African Company may be a chapter of the past, but its consequences live in the present, in families separated across continents, in generational trauma, in racial inequity, and in the economic pillars of the modern world. But history is not only a record of what happened, it is a guide for what must never happen again. The truth, once hidden behind titles, crowns, and corporate seals, now belongs to the people it affected most. The story of the Royal African Company is not just a reminder of the depths humanity can fall to, but also of the strength needed to rise again. The resilience of the African diaspora, the survival of culture, the preservation of identity, these stand as living proof that even the greatest attempts to erase a people have failed. As the last pages of this history close, one truth remains clear. We do not inherit the guilt, but we inherit the responsibility to know, to acknowledge, to repair, and to move forward with clarity, justice, and unwavering remembrance. History lives in what we choose to remember. Thank you for taking this journey with us into the untold history of the Royal African Company. If you found value in uncovering these hidden truths, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. Your engagement helps us bring more stories like this to light, stories that deserve to be remembered, discussed, and passed on. Stay curious, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next chapter of history.